My word for it is community. Entrepreneurship and community are hand in hand. There's no such thing as being a solo entrepreneur. Every entrepreneur has a community of people behind them making that happen, of mentors and customers and all that stuff that makes this possible.
Yeah.
So entrepreneurship is really the art of community. And what is firefighting? Firefighting is community.
So, Joe Caughey from Triink Tools and obviously the Fire Tech brand. Welcome to the 2448.
Thank you.
Joe has spent his whole life as a firefighter. Whole life. Like he's 21 years old, like a baby. I actually have no idea how old Joe is, but
25.
25, yeah. Spent his life as a firefighter, started and run a business, got a degree in something, entrepreneurship at school, which I didn't even know was a degree. That's like being having a degree in, I don't even know what, being a professional golfer. Isn't that like a lifestyle?
Yeah. Okay.
I have no idea. No, I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah.
And and now you're running the Fire Tech brand, fire market side for us here at Hiviz.
Yeah.
And this is a pretty cool show because we're going to merge two different businesses and two different roles together and hear all about your story.
Yeah, it'll be kind of fun.
All right. Well, kick us off. Why don't we? I want to know just like how did you get into this whole, like, you're in public safety, but your background. You went to school for entrepreneurialism. Do you love business or do you love firefighting, or what's this whole? How do these connect?
I don't know. I think I really like both. You know, I always had a dream of being a full-time firefighter, and I was telling somebody the other day. I said I feel like I'm kind of living that dream out because I get to work in the fire space and still do firefighting on the side as a volunteer, and so it's kind of the best of both worlds. I kind of get to I kind of feel like I'm in the full time. I'm in the fire service full time, just in a different capacity. You know?
How did you get involved in the fire service? Was that kind of like something when you were a kid you knew firefighters, or what happened?
Yeah, so my uncle was a firefighter growing up out in Montana, and then transitioned to Laramie County, Wyoming. And so I always got to kind of see him, you know, from time to time as a firefighter. And I thought that was super cool. Loved the fire trucks. Yeah, you met him recently. Yeah, out at FEMA.
I was in DC. At Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so it was just always super interesting to me. So I think I was 15 years old. I think the same track a lot of us in the office took. I was an explorer in the Explorer program up Minnesota, White Bear Lake, Minnesota. Did that for a few years and just knew it had to be a part of my life. So,
that's really cool.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you were kind of pre-fire service days, like what was... You have a very, very interesting past. There's some funny anecdotal businessy type things in it. But like, tell me about young Joe. What was young Joe into?
Yeah, so I grew up skiing a lot in Minnesota, which is interesting because we live in the mountains here in Asheville.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of snow here in Asheville. I lived in Minnesota. There's no mountains, but there's a lot of snow. So we skied downhill skiing, but it was like little 200-foot hills, you know. And I just was, since I was a kid, I don't know what it was, but like something about the process of a ski resort, like making snow, was just like super interesting to me. I just loved the whole thing of like how they could control Mother Nature in that way. And I literally, from like the time I was probably 10 years old, like that was like my life's dream. I was like, how do I do that myself?
Make snow,
yeah.
Really?
And so like I had this whole backyard mini ski resort thing in my parents' backyard, and literally designed my own snowmaking system, like from scratch. Made my own compressors, my own pumps. That was just super interesting to me.
Like, how did you figure out anything about that? Like, I feel like I couldn't go outside and begin making snow if my life depended on it.
It's just all science. So I just started reading about it. It was like all I could think about. So I know I watched your story and like your school bus history. Like that's almost the exact parallel. Like it's all I thought about. Like my room was full of snowmaking equipment, and I would call the companies. They all knew me, and like, you know, like I was like, hey, I'm 12 years old. I just want to talk to you guys about your XYZ gun, you know, like they'd be like, okay, like I'll send you a brochure. It's like, okay.
That's so funny. So did you ever actually do it?
Oh yeah, quite a bit. Yeah. And just destroyed my parents' house in the process. Like we'd wake up in the morning and like go to like open the faucet and a bunch of air would come out. My parents would be like, Joe! And I'm like, oh shoot, like something froze up that night and backed all the air from, because it's an air-water combination.
When you make snow, it is.
Yeah, so you mix compressed air and high-pressure water. But if it goes wrong, you back one or the other into the other.
Oh, interesting.
So check valve probably would have solved that.
You didn't have one. No. So you're at home.
Yeah.
How old were you when you're making snow?
Oh, I was probably 11, 12 years old.
Oh, like a kid.
Kid. I mean, I did it through, you know, for a couple of years. So my parents were like, you've destroyed our house. Now.
How much snow could you make, like, if you were out doing it?
You could make a few inches an hour. So each gun could do probably a 25-foot by 15-foot area and probably do 1.5 inches an hour. So in a night, like an 8-hour night, before school, I could probably do a foot and a half or 2 feet.
No way.
Yeah.
Where does the water come from for this activity?
So usually from my parents' house, which was the problem, because it's very expensive to do that. It's like filling a swimming pool just 24/7. So that wasn't good. So then I started pumping water out of the lake, which also was extremely problematic. So there was some of the drawbacks. So.
What was kind of your? I just got to hear this best snowmaking experience and worst snowmaking experience.
Oh, dude.
I feel like there's got to be
I
some
worked
good ones.
so hard for like an entire like winter shoveling driveways. That's why I did. It's hard. That's why I had a business then. I had businesses doing driveway and snow plowing and yard lawn care stuff.
To fuel this.
To fuel this.
No way.
So I was like, every dollar I made was like, I'm gonna put that into this, you know.
That's
and
so funny.
So I put all this time, money into getting this really nice pump for the setup down there, and had a big freeze up one night, and I was like 14 and just completely blew the pump up. Like, I mean, shattered the casing, everything.
No.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like months of work went into like purchasing that pump, and it sucked. So that was probably the worst.
What did you do? Did you buy a new one? Or did you end snowmaking forever?
I think that was the beginning of the end.
Really?
My parents were like, you're done. Like, you're done with all of this. Like, I was so mad. And I had broken enough of my dad's tools and stuff around that. Like, I mean, just everything breaks when it's that cold out. So
that's funny.
Yeah. Best one, it's just cool. Like, everybody's like, oh my gosh, why'd you have snow in your yard? It's Halloween.
So it'd be like, it wouldn't be freezing everywhere, or it wouldn't be snowing everywhere.
Yeah.
You would be like the only place with snow.
Exactly. So
oh, wow.
It was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to dive back into, so you had a business, or you started business young. I mean, if you're making snow like 11, 12, 13, whatever, then this is really funny because I ran my businesses in high school, so I would love buses. So I wanted to like drive a bus. So like I tied two things together. Tell me about these businesses.
Yeah. So, like I said, I was making snow, and everything was about like, how do I fund this system I want to make and build all these things I want to build. And I love being outside. I love shoveling. So I started I would just go shovel the neighbors' houses anyways for fun because I thought it was fun to shovel. I loved just being outside. And my neighbors started paying me like, oh, hey, thanks, man. Like, here's $20. Like, thanks for shoveling our driveway. And I was like, oh, I can make money doing this, And so all of a sudden I was like, whoa, this is pretty sweet. So I started shoveling driveways. And then in the summertime, started mowing lawns. And what really got our lawn mowing thing going was there was a new development going in very close by my folks' house, and it was all these like $850,000 homes, so big time, big houses, you know, and they would put in new sod. And I didn't have the nice equipment. The guys, there's those big companies that have these zero turns. Also, I was driving around my parents' lawnmower, garden tractor, and the new sod is super sensitive to like zero turns because zero turns are pretty hard on the sod. So I looked at myself and said, I don't have very good equipment, but if I can twist this story, I can upsell my crappy equipment. And so that's what I did. I went out to them, I handed out flyers and said, I specialize in new sod cutting. Because you don't want those guys with the zero turns. You want me with my non-zero turn. It's slower. I take my time with it, but I don't tear up your lawn. And so I actually looked at my business. I don't have the business that they have. I don't have the tools they have. But if I can sell you on why you should use my tools instead.
Then you got a business.
So I think we had 26 clients at one point. We were bringing in,
good
lot of money that should have been reported that wasn't reported, that kind of stuff. So it was pretty cool. Funny. So that's how it kind of all came to be. But so I did that for years and ended up we sold off part of the business when I got into college to another group of kids doing it.
No way.
Yeah, and then my brothers ran it for a couple years after that. So for just a smaller group of it, but it's pretty crazy.
Funny.
Yeah.
Was business part of your family? Like, was that something that you guys all were entrepreneurial folks, or
not entrepreneurial? My parents are pretty. Their career paths were pretty direct, but they really supported my entrepreneurial stuff. It was. They definitely. I remember. I can't tell you how many times my dad would be driving me around with the lawnmower in the back of the trailer, drop me off to go mow for an afternoon.
That's awesome.
But it was one of those things where I would work like 10% of what my friends worked, like they'd be nannying all summer or whatever, and I'd work like two mornings a week and mow a ton of lawns and have like 8x amount of money they had. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like,
it is funny. Business lets you, if you can figure out how to be like, I always say work smarter, not harder. Cam was funny. Cam. So she's always like, when we first met, she was like, if I gotta get to the top of that mountain, I'll just start walking. And I'm like, why don't we build an airplane? Let's get a magic carpet. Let's find someone to take us to the top. And she's like, I'm just going to walk up there. And she's like the hardest worker I've ever met. And then when we met, we started working on like, okay, how do you, like my whole brain is wired to figure out a creative way to get there using 10% of the effort twice as fast.
Yep.
And like business is that tool that
Exactly.
Yeah. And now, I mean, she's like phenomenally diverse in her way of doing things. But it's funny because when I think about folks that love business or that find that out early, in like high school, grade school, like that's the fuel when you figure out how to make something like whatever it is, your passion or your thing. Like if you can 10x with 10%, then that's the magic of business. So you, in high school, you had this lawn mowing business. You kind of sold it out to start college.
Yep.
Did you know that college was your track, or what was that whole thing
I
like?
really didn't want to go to college. So I was also, I had another side job too, an entrepreneurial side job. I was a company out in Michigan called Railworks, and they build ski and snowboard rails for ski resorts. And then they actually called them at like 14. I was like, hey, would you guys sponsor my hill? Like blah blah blah. And they're like,
at your house?
Yeah, they're like, yeah, we'll send you some rails. You know, like whatever.
That's awesome.
I was like, sweet. So they sent me like $2,000-$3,000 worth of rails. I was like, this is crazy. My parents were like, what is going on? You know, like stuff.
So you had a little snowboard,
snowboard setup down there, and so I was like, hey, how can I help you guys out? So my dad would literally, I'd like load up our trailer and he would drive me out to skiers and I'd set up all the rails out there and we'd demo rails. They're all consumer rails and stuff like that.
way.
So it was super cool. And then I helped develop their wakeboard line of stuff. So we did wakeboard jumps and wakeboard ramps and all that stuff. So I lived on a lake growing up, so I was like, oh, hey, I know how to do this stuff. You guys should get into this business.
No way.
So anyways, that was kind of the start of it. So I knew I could do my own thing. I was like, I don't need college, like, you know. But my parents were like, you should really go to college. And I was like, well, if I'm going to go to college, I'm going to do it in my terms. Like, I'm going to go to college and study how to do what I like to do. Like, I want to learn
really
how to start a business. So I was looking for an entrepreneurial program, and the school I ended up going to had that entrepreneurship program at it. So that was kind of a big draw for me. But
that's cool.
Coming out of high school, though, having done the service business model, I really wanted to try a product-based model.
Oh, yeah.
Because I want to be able to scale it. And service-based businesses, when it's built around you can
scale the size of your volume.
Yeah. And so
interesting.
that's really what I wanted to get into. That's where we'll go with this conversation eventually. But
I can't wait to hear about it. You know, I'm curious when you talk about that college trajectory is unique because when I know some guys that have gone like to entrepreneurship school, and I always laugh because I'm like, how do you train someone to be an entrepreneur? Like they either are, either are wired that way or you aren't.
Yeah.
And I think people can start a business, but like having that drive or that innate ability to like, I'm going to see snowmaking as my target, so I'm going to go figure out how I can
make it
use 10x effort and 100x return.
Yeah.
But it's funny because the order that you took was entrepreneurialism. Yep, I'm an entrepreneur. Now I'm going to go train to do it.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting strategy because I don't know that most people do that. I don't know how you maybe in your program even did that.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. It was definitely backwards to do it that way for sure. But it's kind of cool because I was like, wait, there's a name for that? What I'm doing right now? Like, oh, there's like that was the weirdest part. The whole process of like learning entrepreneurship and like learning business was like, oh, I already do that. Didn't know it was like a formal process. You know, like I just did it.
That's
know?
interesting.
So it was kind of cool.
I'm reading a book right now. It's called Real Leaders Don't Use PowerPoint, which is funny because I love PowerPoint. But in that book, they talk a lot about there are some things that you can do when you're giving a presentation that are like, there's structured frameworks that exist. Yeah. And it's funny reading the book now, a lot of those things I've done but haven't had a name for. And I'm sure people do this all the time. Like when they read a book and they realize like, holy cow, this is what I can make these little tweaks and then I fit into this framework and it's like 10x potential. But it's funny, I feel like as much as I always hated school, I feel like if there was a program that's like, where you can take your experience and then it's like, holy cow, I can learn the last little things I need to learn to really 10x
really
whatever it's doing.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like that'd be unique. How many of your peers were former business people when you got into it?
A lot of them had small. The entrepreneurship program at the college I went to, it was a subset of the business program, and so you had to apply to get into it separately from going to college there.
Oh, interesting. So you had to apply and get into college, and then apply and get into that.
Yeah, and it took people from all backgrounds, so they didn't just limit to business students. So, but they were really looking for a certain type of person, somebody who kind of had that background of like, okay, this is sort of their life path to. They have that mindset because you can't train the mindset, right? You can train the business side, but you can't train the mindset. So they look for that mindset that they could then feed the business side,
What was the interview process like, or how did you find these people?
It was a lot like here. There was social interviews. It was very much the same thing. It was probably 5 to 6 rounds of interviews. By the time it was all said and done, you met with program directors. There were social times. They wanted to see how you interact with other people. They were going to travel the world with you and like all this stuff. So it was very much similar to how you guys do your hiring process here, which is kind of cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Was there anything memorable about it that you thought was like particularly unique?
I think it was just the stages of it all. They had to interview with both the professors and that type of stuff of the program, but then you also had to interview with the current students and some alums of the program too.
Oh, really? So they wanted to see like do you think like we think? And
yeah, exactly. And then they also had this period of time where you had this social interview. So you go to this like it was actually it was on a bar actually you had to go to, and you had to go there for an hour and a half basically with all these other people who were applying for it. And they just watched you. How do you interact with people? Like,
really?
How do you work the room? Like what's your technique?
Way.
Yeah.
Did you get any interesting feedback? Like, oh, we liked you did this, or we didn't like you did this?
No, I mean, I nothing for I can't think of anything particular. No.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow, huh? So tell me about like when you got in, were your folks, if they were a more traditional track, were they pretty stoked that you were doing college and doing something that you liked?
They just want me to go to college. They're like, dude, just get a degree, like whatever. Like, we don't care what you do, like just get a degree, please,
Yeah.
So when I got into that program, it was kind of like, okay, this is all coming together now. And the other part I haven't shared yet is, why I chose that college. It was for the entrepreneurship program, but it's also really unique. There's only 2 colleges in the U.S. that have their own fire departments. And this college, St. John's University in Minnesota, has their own fire department. We're in the middle of nowhere in northern Minnesota. We're talking, the nearest major town is about 25 to 30 minutes away.
Oh, wow.
And then we're 15 minutes away from any other town up there. And we've got, 3,000 kids on campus up there. We have got a prep high school up there. We've got a couple nursing homes on campus, a whole monastic community up there. The largest Catholic monastic community in the country, actually.
Really?
So there was a need for service up there, right?
Yeah, but just only there, not
but on this little microcosm, like micro scale, right? So so when I heard about that, I was like, boy, like if I had to go to college, right? Like that was kind of the expectation. Like, this kind of fits the bill. Like I can do firefighting, I can go to school for business and entrepreneurship. Like this is the best thing ever.
That's awesome.
And so that's kind of how I ended up there, and it was awesome.
Had you been an explorer before you went up there, so you knew fire service what you wanted to do?
Yeah. So when I got up there, I interviewed, and it's funny. So the fire department up there, it's 24 firefighters on the department, 16 of which are students. So they take 4 each year.
Really?
Yep. And it's a student campus job. So it's not like most people up there aren't going there for that. It's not like we do like a fire program or a fire degree there. We don't offer any of that. We're just a college. And so you don't go there for like fire science. Like a lot of people go to fire science school. It wasn't that at all.
It was go to school for business and you just happened to be a firefighter.
Happened to be a firefighter. And so it was so funny because like most people on the department were like, well, it's either this or being a janitor. Like it's either this or cleaning toilets. So like, well, I'll be a firefighter, like whatever. So we got paid like $10 an hour, $10.32 an hour, I think was when I left there. So it's pretty cool, and they put us through Fire 1, Fire 2, all that stuff. And,
oh, really? So were you certified when you started, or no? That was part of the deal.
Was part of the deal.
Certify you up.
Yep. So your first, right when you get hired right there, you start, September 1st of your freshman year, and then they start that certification process. So by the time you roll into January that following year, you're fully certified and you're riding the truck every day.
No way.
Yeah, it was super cool.
What do you do when you start? Is it just like you just go and start doing all your night classes?
Yeah,
and stuff?
they
run an academy.
Put you right into classes there. So they just bring in an instructor and they start doing your classes right there. So it's the 4 of you guys, together, which is really cool because it builds a really strong sense of community within that core group of firefighters.
Yeah, that's a small academy.
Yeah,
I feel like that's cool.
And the neatest part about it is we actually have our own firehouse on campus called Greg House, and so it's where all the firefighters live together.
Oh, it's separate from the actual station.
Yeah, but it's right next to the station, and so the firehouse, awesome. We call it the firehouse, and we had during your sophomore and junior year, you lived together in that place with other firefighters. So whether it's 2 a.m. and you just whatever, and you run to the station to go grab a call with all your guys, or it's 8 in the afternoon, 8 in the morning, you're waking up and we get a pager goes off. It's kind of cool. The whole house drains out into the station. Everybody grabs their gear and goes. So
that's awesome.
It was really cool. It's a cool environment. So,
that's neat.
Yeah.
What was it like? When you started school there, did your teachers and did the school know you were also like? I mean, if it's a small fire station, it's like, okay, you get a fire in the middle of the day, you're probably going to leave.
Yeah, so we left class. I mean, it was the expectation that our pager's on us 24/7, 365, right? So we're up there. We are this community's first line of defense, right? Like just like anywhere else. There was no full-time staff up there. And so...
Oh, none? Fully just this group? It wasn't
group.
There was no rotating day shift, whatever?
No. So we did do weekend duties. So we did... you had to work 2 weekend duties semester, half year. So that was, we basically put 2 guys on. They would do truck checks for us, and they kind of do some of the maintenance around the station for us during that weekend. 5 p.m. Friday to 5 p.m. Sunday. Make sure we had, it's a lot of young kids up there. Make sure we had some people who are not at the bar that night type of thing that could be capable of taking care of business. So,
yeah, of course.
So on weekends we would have some coverage, but yeah. So I mean, literally, middle of final, pager goes off. I'm out. And there was it was funny because most of the professors were like, that's awesome. Yep, do what you gotta do, And it was funny. Like I remember like leaving class a couple times. Like there was one time I left class and like, I got a call and left class, and I get back, and these like two gals are sitting there, and they're like, "Oh, like what did you do?" You know, like
yeah,
like, "Oh, must have been something stupid." You know? And I was like, "Well, some guy's having a heart attack." Like they're like, and both it just went dead quiet. Like, "Oh,
well."
It's like, "What'd you do the last 5 minutes?" You know, like you sat in class still. Oh, cool. How's that going for you? You know, like
That's awesome.
So it's cool. But remember, there's one prof who was like, you know, Joe, like, I don't want you to do my class. You know, I mean, actually more than one prof. There was one prof in particular that had said that, hey, I don't want you in my class, you know, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, listen, I am. Like, sorry, like, I hate to tell you this, but I am leaving class. If this thing goes off, I go. You know, and it was funny because it wasn't even a couple months later. We got a fire call in the middle of the night, like a Thursday night. And we actually have the largest education building west of the Mississippi for like a long, like 50 years. It was the largest west of the Mississippi, and it was built in like
really?
18. I don't even know.
So it's a giant old flammable
building, right?
Yeah.
That they had retrofitted all this sprinkler system stuff into over years. So there's like 11 or 12 different zones. This thing, nightmare. Anyway, so we did call there one night, and sprinkler in the attic had burst open, a 3-inch line. It was probably flowing a few hundred gallons a minute of water up in the 5th floor of this building, and we had water in the basement when we got there.
Oh,
right? There's
no.
water
So
cascading
you knew it's
up.
like, oh,
so we're like, oh boy, you know,
Yeah.
every floor is flooded, right? So and it's just coming through the ceiling into the next one. So I'm up on like the 3rd floor working to like start clearing offices out because I'm trying to grab computers, trying to do just at this point just salvage mitigation,
Yeah.
right? Like what can we do to minimize the damage here? And I walk into one office and I'm like moving this guy's computer. I'm like, I recognize that picture. That's my prof, the one who doesn't want me to be in class for this stuff. You know,
File all this stuff
So I'm taking all of his computer off the floor, putting it on the table, I'm getting all his files out. And I
leave
sent him an
him a
email.
note?
I said, "Hey, it was like 4 a.m. I've been up all night working in this building, right?" Sent me an email. I was like, "Hey, man, like I am not gonna be at class tomorrow morning. I was actually in your office last night." And he sent me back an email at like 2 p.m. Like, so he's like, "Thank you so much." Like, and I was like, "Don't ever question like why I'm leaving class again." Like, you know.
That's awesome. Yeah, way to go.
So, yeah.
That's pretty cool. So I assume that experience, did that kind of galvanize both the entrepreneurial and the fire service experience?
Certainly.
Like this is
certainly. Definitely did. And when the entrepreneurship program, the way it works is you actually launch a business. That's the whole goal. It's basically an incubator.
Oh, really?
And you learn by doing. It's not really learning by textbook. It's learn by doing. And they supply mentors that help you to like get the skills you need. So like when you're a lawyer, we've got like 15 lawyers on retention with the program,
Really?
right? That help you pro bono. Like,
so
hey,
you don't have to like, oh, I got a fund. Like,
yes,
this
they
guy's
help
$500
make
an hour.
connections to make things move quicker for you.
That's cool.
And so as I got into it, I was like, man, I want to do something that's like in that space. And so one of the first businesses I looked at was actually a business I really wanted to do we would do like additives for your oxygen tanks. So think of like vitamin packs, right? You take vitamins, right? And you get all juiced up before you go work out, like pre-workout.
Yeah.
Imagine that, but it's in your air tank.
Oh, and a firefighter.
Yeah.
Tank. Oh, so you wanted to work in the fire service somehow.
Yeah. So the whole idea was like, what if there was like in their compressor system, like in a Bauer compressor system, it puts like vitamins into adrenaline, right? It makes you superhuman for like 45 minutes while you're working this pack, right? Like you put that pack on, and you're just like, like I'm just juiced up right now.
Yeah.
That was my original business plan. That is, when you start thinking about the logistics on that, like I talked to legal about that, and they're like, yeah, there's
like,
no way. You're putting something about somebody's lungs. There's no way. That's like, got it, you know? Yeah. So that's where Triink came from.
All right. So then what the heck is it? So what did you settle on? How'd you end up with this sort of thing?
So like I said before, I wanted to do a product-based business that I could learn how to scale, and that was really a key thing for me. And this was really kind of the ticket. So, everybody's like, "Oh man, I want to start like the next Facebook." It's like, dude, you have no idea what that even means. Like you don't even know like what that means. You don't even know how difficult it is to make like a paperclip. Paperclip, like tell me how you make a paperclip. You have no idea how you make paperclip. It's an incredibly complex thing. It's super simple, but it's complex, right? Like our lights are incredibly complex to make, right? And so I want to start with something small and simple that I could scale up. And we're in college. I liked like everyday carry tools. Like I like the idea of I lose everything just like you do. So like I can't carry some. I always want to carry like a knife. It'd be cool to carry like a little pocket knife with me. I can't because I lose it. But I love the idea of like everyday carry stuff. And the best tool you have is the tool you have on you. Is my
that's
theory,
a good point.
right?
Yeah.
And so
you learn that in the fire service. The tool's not on your truck doesn't help.
Yeah, the tools on truck sitting in your truck does not help. Bring it with you. You know. Yeah. And so when I was looking at this, I was like, okay, we're in college. I like everyday carry tools. What if we made like the ultimate beer and spirits tool, right? Like what if we made like the greatest bottle opener of all time, right? Give it every function possible. Like what if we did something like that? It was a no-brainer. So we started, I had to learn how to use CAD. I had never used CAD before. I never done any of this stuff before.
Yeah.
So I self-taught myself in CAD. Literally spent weeks just learning CAD.
Yeah.
Learned how to use a 3D printer.
Really?
Got some mentors in that space to help me like learn how to 3D print.
How did you even know how do you know what to make? I mean, like, okay, so this thing obviously designed, but like, so you had to do a business plan first, then you had to like come up with what the heck this thing was going to do?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I actually built the business backwards. We actually started off with the marketing first. I wanted to figure out like how I'd sell the product and like how we'd market it to like our audience before I actually built the product, which is totally different than how most people do.
We've done that a few times at Hiviz where we're like, hey, would you buy this? And they're like, yeah, can I place an order? I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah, we got to design it now, but yeah. So that's kind of how it started off. But so yeah, we kind of figured out like the whole, like the original mantra brand, the Pickaxe is the product here we're talking about.
Explain it because some of our viewers are just on audio.
Yeah, the Pickaxe is a 10 function beer and spirits tool. It does everything from being just a normal bottle opener to a shot measurement tool. You can measure multiple shots in a standard solo cup. It's got a shotgun point. You can vent hole with it. It's got a fun stop remover. If you don't know what fun stop remover is, you're probably too old for the tool in general. Can't tell people go, what's a fun stopper? I'm like, oh, you're too old for the tool. Sorry.
This was really made for your target audience.
This was made for a target audience.
Was this the peers of you in like all your buddies in class?
So
like these
great
guys.
because we would print out. I would spend the whole week printing out dozens of prototypes, trying different variations. I think we had about 250 prototypes in total. I've got a box in my parents' house still.
No way.
Prototypes, just all plastic. And we'd hand them out on the weekend and say, go play with this weekend, and we get all the feedback and be like, dude, this does not work. Like, you need to make this piece a little bit bigger. Like, it doesn't fit my keychain very nice, all that stuff.
So you had a test bed of users that you could do. Like, I'm sure someone trying to invent Facebook.
It was like the greatest. We were literally, our test bed was our friends, So it's like, here, just take this and go play,
That's awesome.
Super cool.
So you bought a 3D printer so you could prototype these things.
Yeah.
And you had to teach yourself how to program
Yep.
CAD. So I cut you off earlier. I'm curious. Tell me more about that whole, like, okay, so I want to make a tool. What the heck is my first step?
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, I came with marketing for it first, and we really wanted this. The Pickaxe was the name we came up with, and we were kind of thinking of like, how do we make a tool that like feels like America, feels like drinking beer. It's like that was our whole vision. We started to set this thing up, and so we wrote this whole we basically wrote like a bunch of marketing materials about like behind this before we even had a physical product, and it was like. The Pickaxe is like the icon of America, right? It forged this country. That Pickaxe drove through the mountains in the Rockies, right? Like that Pickaxe forged the future for this country. And so it was kind of this like iconic play on that, and like how many great beers were had on campfires in the middle of the Rocky Mountains with a pickaxe sitting next to you as you're working on the railroads in the middle of nowhere in the 1800s, right? Like that was so we're trying to like bring
play
that
on that
vibe. Yeah, play that vibe, right? And actually, it was kind of funny because we ended up kind of pivoting away from that later on just because we really wanted to be a more modern tool company. We could do other stuff besides just drinking tools. We wanted to progress from there, but that's where the name originally came from. And then we started making the tool. So the tool kind of follows that form factor, and we had some cool Easter eggs in here, like our key ring holes, the shape of a bottle, and things like that. So
that's awesome.
So that was kind of how we did the tool. So 250 prototypes and about a year's worth of work went into it. But once you have the physical product itself, that's great.
Yeah, that's not a business. That's
you got an idea. You got some 3D prints. You can't scale that up. So we had to figure out how we actually make the stupid thing.
Yeah. Now, when you were interviewing, I saw a video that I think was of your first marketing video was of the 3D printed prototypes, isn't that
Probably,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, they were all of our marketing material. I mean, just like any business does, like none of them actually worked, right? Like all of our marketing content, we had to like loosen all the bottle caps before we'd do it because they didn't actually work. They were all plastic. They wouldn't actually do it. They'd crack,
That is so funny.
So, we had to figure out how to make these things. And that was really the next journey.
What was going on at school? Like, so it kind of walk me through this entrepreneurship program. It started a business, but that's a big task. So did they tell you, okay, go write your plan, now shoot a piece of content, 3D print this thing? Or
no,
what was that like?
It was much more loose than that. It was basically each semester there was kind of an expectation or goal to what you were going to kind of do next semester. So like semester one of the program was like idea generation, right? So going through vetting out a bunch of different ideas for businesses and trying to like basically choose one model you're going to go with and attempt.
Yeah.
And then like the second, semester is going to be more like, okay, how are you going to set up the legal for this? How are you going to set up like the product or the service? Actually building out a business plan for it. And then the third semester and so on are going to be like, hey, how do you bring this to market?
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like? That type of stuff. So,
was it a team project or was it an individual thing?
Yeah. So I actually ended up getting I started looking at different business ideas, talked about the air pack one earlier, stuff like that. And when I launched this idea to the group, I said, hey, that's what I'm intending to do, right? I don't know
To
what it's
your
going to look like.
classmates or
Yeah, it's
whatever?
my classmates. This is what I'm intending to do. I got 15 classmates in there. This is what I'm thinking I'm going to do. And I'm like this like business kid who doesn't really care about business, doesn't care about school very much at all. Like, and this guy across the room raises his hand, goes, "I want to partner with you on that." And I was like, "Who is that over there?" And it was this guy named Bardia, and he comes from Sweden. He is a 4.0 student. He's never gotten less than an A on anything in his life. He cares about school more than anything in his life.
Oh, really? So like
we couldn't be more different. We couldn't be more different at all. He comes from a mathematics background, very into like AI. He's currently going to school for his master's now. Super, super smart guy. And I was like, dude, I don't think we're gonna get along at all. Like, I think we're the complete opposite of each other. And that partnership was like the greatest thing we've ever done.
You still did it. You still said, yeah.
Oh, it was amazing.
Let's make it happen.
I said, well, what the heck, we'll try it. And it was just amazing when you get a partner that has the exact opposite skill set, just like a marriage relationship. You get a partner
Kevin,
I know you guys, yeah, complete
about
opposites, right? I mean, almost no overlap. You only add to each other's skill sets.
That's
and so
a good point, yeah.
It was one of the most valuable things I learned of the whole thing was finding a partner that can supplement all your weak areas. Is if you can find that, that's a magical touch. That is everything in a business.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
So how did it begin to take shape? I mean, like, so a 3D printed idea you came up with on a napkin, turning. I mean, this is a casting or is it a machine part?
Yeah.
This is like a serious thing.
Then you have to figure out, okay, how do you make it? You know? And so we started researching, like, how do you make something like this happen? And so there's really a couple different options. You can CNC it. So you take a solid block of aluminum and you CNC these things out.
Yep.
The part price is super high because it takes a while.
It's like a machined part.
Yep. A lot of excess waste there and stuff like that. But the upfront cost is zero because it's just a file put onto a CNC bed, right? So it was like super low upfront cost, but scalability, it was like $4.50 a piece to make. It was way
your part
too much
cost
money.
is too high.
Yeah, way too high. And then we looked at like stamping, where you stamp it out of like a piece of metal.
Just sheet metal or something?
Yep. Yeah. Again, relatively low cost up front. They have to make the stamp, but it's not too expensive. But the problem is there's so much finishing work that has to happen there. It's killer. You know, you have to go in and file
because this thing is beautiful. Like the edges are beautiful. It's got your logos and stuff. Yeah, it's nice.
And so we were like, okay, the dream would be metal injection molding. Like that's how we want to do it. It's called MIM. And so you get a mold and it's high pressure and it fills it full of metal and then it hardens and they pop them out.
Is it like die casting?
I'm probably not the right person to ask. I think die casting is low pressure. I think this is high pressure.
Oh, interesting.
I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we reached out to some American companies to do this. So it was our whole goal, like American beer, all the American story, right? It felt good to say that. And we got our first couple of quotes back, and we went out and met with these people in person. And for something like this, and we're talking about this Pickaxe, it's a bottle opener.
Yeah, for those of you that can't see it, it's like,
it's inch
quarter
and a half
inch thick
by tiny little thing. They wanted anywhere between $10,000 and $13,000 just to tool this up.
Yeah.
And they're talking about, hey, we're going to get you this report. And these guys, I mean, one of the manufacturers, they do all the gun parts for like Smith & Wesson and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, yeah, we're going to get you this 30-page report of all the tolerances you set, and we'll tell you how close we are. And I'm like, guys, like, hold on a second. We're building, this is not life or death. Like, they also build EpiPens too. I was like, nobody's going to die if this doesn't work, right? Like, we want it to work, but like this isn't mission critical. And so they're like, I'm like, I just need to open a bottle, like, you know. And so $10,000 to $13,000 up front. We're in college broke was like not an option. So we went over to, my Bardi and I flew over to Asia. We went over to Vietnam and China for, I don't know, a month and a half.
Just type in like flights.google. Hey,
yeah. So our program encourages like international travel throughout to like see the world and see entrepreneurship in different parts of the world type of thing.
Yeah.
So we spent time in Silicon Valley and some other areas too.
Oh, cool.
But we went over to Asia to figure out how do we manufacture this thing over there? What would that look like? And we were both kind of skeptical, like, this isn't going to be right. Like, we don't want to have some kids working on like building our stuff. Like, that's not good with us. So we got over there. We started seeing some facilities in Vietnam, and we moved up to China and visited some facilities there. And we were blown away. It's not what you expect at all. They're beautiful facilities. We got to talk to everybody on the floor. They were like, you can talk to anybody you want here. Like, go ahead, ask what they make. They'll tell you everything. They'll show you the pictures of their kids in their house, and like, awesome. So we felt good about the people.
That's cool.
What we were doing there. But we really came down on the price. If we could afford to do it in America, we would. But over there, we were able to do this for, I think our upfront mold fee was $500 versus like awesome. $13,000.
Yeah.
And then part price was like $125, which is the same as what it was in America. But over there, they also package it for you too. So they did the whole backing, the paper backing here.
Really?
Package it and assemble it all for you. Which in America, you have to do it. You know, one company does your production, another company does your packaging, another company does your shipping.
Yeah.
They do it all in one place.
And just shows up.
And just shows up. Yeah. So it was a no-brainer for us to go that route. And it allows us to do a lot of things with scalability and stuff too. So
how did you find I know when we go on world tours looking for suppliers and that sort of stuff, like we have to set up meetings with the different folks and like vet out before we go there. There's a lot of research. How did you figure out who you wanted to visit?
We did exactly that. We spent probably 3 months before we went over there just trying to figure out who we could visit and like what those would look like. Yeah. And it was through like an alum of an alum's friend, like that lived over there.
So someone had a connection that says, hey, this is probably a good place.
You should check this one out, you know? And so we checked out a couple different manufacturers, and the one we ended up with actually has some long, 7 levels of separation thing to us.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Yeah.
What was that, like you think about the vetting process and you think about like the things that went right, but what didn't go right or what didn't you choose that would have been the wrong choice? Obviously, the $13,000 tool is one of them.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we made a lot of mistakes along the way, but those were also, Bardia's mindset. I loved his mindset in this. He says, I said, Bardia, do we have any regrets about what we did with our business? And he said, no, we don't have any regrets, because a regret means we didn't learn something. So every time we would make a mistake or stumble or fall or run into a wall with our business, or like, what are we gonna do next? Where do we go from here?
Yeah.
It was like, that's just an opportunity to learn. And we looked at it that way. It was pretty cool. We never felt like we had like an obstacle. It's more like we're just like, we're going to learn a little bit more today than we thought we were going to,
Yeah.
So that was pretty neat. But our big hurdle really came with, now we got to the point where we had a product, right? We had designed the product. We had used CAD, 3D printed hundreds of models, spent a year getting everything ready, getting an LLC set up, going through all that stuff, getting our actual prototypes in, shooting all the marketing content, all that stuff, and then we were ready to launch this thing on Kickstarter. That's
so you did all that before, like, it wasn't launched, and
it wasn't even launched. We had nothing. So that was a scary moment. We're like, okay, we've been working on this for a year. We have no idea if they're actually going to sell.
Oh wow!
Right, we've done all this work up to this point, but like, are these actually going to move out in the world?
Because the goal was to actually start an actual business.
Business, yeah.
Theory business.
No, this
is like we actually want to bring these in.
I want to like leave here with a business,
Yeah.
And so we put it on Kickstarter. We spent a long time building that up. We brought in an intern, a quote unquote intern.
Just another student at school.
Just another student who doesn't get paid, type of thing. So just like us, we're paying money out of our pocket to do this thing.
Yeah.
And they ran all of our social stuff, because doing a Kickstarter is very labor intensive. It requires a ton of pre-work and a ton of work during the actual Kickstarter itself. But for those who aren't aware, Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform. You put it up there for anywhere from, I think, 10 to 30 days.
And it's online.
It's online, and people can say, I like that product, and they'll put their money down to basically pre-order the product. And what we liked about it was we had a lot of people say, hey, we'll invest, we'll give you $10,000. You go start this business, But we wanted to validate that there's a market there for the product.
So it's better to have 1,000 orders for one than it is to have $1,000 from one person.
And then not be able to pay that guy back or that person back, And
that's an interesting point. Yeah.
So this validated our market for us. If we got it, great. If we didn't, there's no market.
What happens if you don't, do you set a goal or something?
All or nothing.
Really?
So we set a goal for $10,000, I think it was. It was all, we either hit that goal or we don't. Oh, wow. So we either have a business or we don't. And so I remember that night before we launched our Kickstarter, we worked so hard on this thing, right? And it was really like, okay, are we gonna have a business tomorrow or not? Like, is this all for nothing?
So you had no idea.
No idea.
It's just like,
yeah. And so I was like, is this all for nothing? Or, and I remember that night we were sitting there, we didn't sleep at all that night before, right? I mean, it's like, this is our baby going into the world now, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do we even sleep, And we're talking, I think I called Bardi, or went over to his apartment at like 3 a.m. I was like, dude, like, I can't sleep, like, and we're both sitting there up, and it's like, you know what, man? Like, we had this moment, this epiphany that brought us like a lot of comfort in that moment. It was, no matter what happens tomorrow with our business, no matter what happens from this point forward with our business, we've accomplished what we set out to accomplish. Our goal was to bring a product to market.
Yeah.
We've done that now.
Yeah.
We learned how to build a business. And what I always say is, if you can build a business once, you can build a business again.
Sure.
The process of building a business is the same, whether it's you're starting the next Microsoft, or you're starting the next Triink tools, or you're starting whatever, right? That process it's the same series of steps. Each one is unique, but it's the same series of steps, the same actions that have to happen.
Yeah.
And so we had this moment where, like, you know what? Like, whether or not we make a profit, whether or not this thing goes everywhere or goes nowhere tomorrow, who cares? When we set this out 2 years ago, our goal coming to college was learn how to do this, and we've done that.
That's a good point, yeah.
And so also we're like, you know what? From that point forward, it was just fun at that point. It was like, let's just see what happens. So we launched on Kickstarter, and we raised $10,000 in like 30 days, and we're like, oh my gosh, we've got a business. We had sold 680 of these things, right?
No way, that's awesome.
So now we're like, how do we deliver all these? You know, like we don't know how to ship stuff. We don't know how to do any of the stuff. So we set up all the automated shipping stuff. We got set up with printers. I could print out 60 labels a minute. And
really?
And I'll never forget. So we get our first order in. I had no idea how these would come.
What was that like?
Semi truck trailer like pulls up like a big U-Haul thing, pulls up in front of our house, my parents' house, and it's at homeless time. And I'm like, what's this guy doing up here? They lost? And it's like there's just pallets full of these tools on the back of this thing. And I'm like, they're like, do you have a forklift? And I'm like,
you're at your parents' house.
Yeah. I'm like, no. So I call my parents, like, Mom, Dad, like, you gotta come down here. Like, I'm gonna need your help. Like, we gotta unload this like semi truck from our house. Like, and so we're literally cutting the crates open, you know, and literally taking box after box of these things off to get them ready to go. We spent that summer shipping out tools to people. And our goal then immediately was after Kickstarter was we need to get in front of consumers. So we went B2C immediately. We had a website set up so we could sell these things immediately to consumers through a website. But we also want to go B2B, and that was really a big pivot point for us too.
And explain what those terms mean for folks.
Yeah, so B2C is business to consumer. So that's like direct to consumer. So let's say you go buy a product. Let's say you call into Hiviz and they say, I want a light for my F550 or something like that. Whatever.
Yeah, just
they can buy it directly from you. Yeah. Business to business would be like, okay, you buy it from a vendor, from a dealer, from a third party. So we're selling to that.
So like if I was like if I'm selling to the local, you know, grocery store, that's business to business. But if I'm selling to the local guy that's drinking beer, that's business to consumer.
Exactly.
Got it.
So that's where we found our niche then after that was we can move large volumes of these things to different distilleries and breweries and that type of stuff. So with this first tool being a drinking tool, immediately was like, here's like O'Brien's. Like they did a bunch of these with us. This is a big liquor store chain up in Minnesota. We did a couple for a couple massive breweries. Liftbridge Brewing in Minnesota, they're a huge brewery. Dan Schwartz is the owner up there, and they graciously bought a ton from us. They use them as their stocking stuffers for like their winter giveaway things.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So super cool. We had a bunch of really great partnerships here. We did some weddings with them. We did all these custom branded wedding ones.
Did you have to tool custom batches for weddings, or how did you do that?
It's all laser etch, and so it's pretty simple for us to do. It's like it costs us like almost nothing to make it happen.
Did you have to actually etch them, or you just have the supplier do it?
They would do it for us. Again, they would show up here for us. Yeah. So, and then we had our lead times to the point we were so close to them. They were like, we'll ship them to you like next day type of thing. So it was really quick, and we could do air freight them, and it wasn't that bad. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So we were able to scale in that way.
Were you still in school while the business is beginning to take shape and form? Or?
Yes. All of this was while I'm in school. I'm still leaving. I mean, Bardia, like every night we're working. I'm like, pager goes off like, hey Bardia, like hold that thought. I got to run, you know, and like run down the station, go like deal with whatever, and then come back and like pick it back up again. So
that's awesome. How did it work in school? Like, were you?
I didn't.
Yeah. Well, was there one professor assigned to your business to follow you through your multiple years, or how did that work?
Yeah. Yep. So there's a group of entrepreneurship professors out of the business program that focus on like kind of being with you for the process, and they sit down with you once a week and talk about your struggle points, your stuck points, that type of stuff, and see what resources they can free up from their side to maybe help you along with those challenges. But it was interesting. I remember my junior year, because I mean at this point like school's not even happening, right? Like I mean I'm just going to classes, but like nothing's actually happening in those classes.
Because the page is going off.
I'm trying to think about this, right? Like every notebook's just full of scribbles. Like I go home from school, like go in class, and like every page is just full of like scribbles of like new product ideas like that, like, and marketing content and stuff like that. Nothing about the actual class I was in for accounting or whatever.
You probably learned a whole lot more doing that.
Way more doing this, but I'll never forget. I sat down with a really, really old professor. I think she's retired. I think it was like her last year there. And she was a law professor, like the most like anti like you and I type people, like person out there. She's a great person, but she was just like, she's like, Joe, you know, and she's so old. And she's like, Joe, I'm a little bit worried about your grades. And I was like, okay, like, dude, what's up? And she's like, well, it's either you're getting an A or getting like a D in every class. Like, what's the deal here? Like, why are you either doing amazing or not amazing? It's like, well, it's either interesting to me, it's going to help my business, or it's not, and I don't put time into it. And she's like, you know, it's not a very good mentality to have. And I was like, well, it's probably not. But I talked to her, and she says, you know, Joe, some point you're going to graduate, and it's going to be, you know, you versus XYZ candidate coming out of this college with the same degree, with the same, you know, everything. On paper, you're going to look the same. You're going to be applying for a job, and it's going to come down to your GPA. And I stopped her and I said, ma'am, I said, with all respect, if it comes down to my GPA, I'm not interested in working in the first place. They don't see the value, whatever else I'm doing, right? Like, no.
When you were interviewing, the last thing I gave two shits about was if you went to school, GPA.
Well, I love when you started your business. You said, you go, yeah, when we post these jobs, you know, they posted them and they had like a college degree was like a requirement, like a preferred thing. And you said that you reached out, you're like, guys, we can't put that on there. Like, I didn't even finish high school. Take that off. Like, that means nothing to me.
That was for your role. Actually, funny.
Yeah.
So the only person in the business qualified to do the role that we were hiring for was me. And the only person who, in the whole business, that wasn't qualified to take the role based on the description was you. I was like, absolutely not. But it's so funny how, like, the academic people of the world, like, they think that academia is like the whole thing. Yeah, if you want to get a job as a lawyer, I mean,
there's certainly there are professions where it's like super important.
If you're gonna be a surgeon, let me tell you, I actually probably do care about you.
Yeah. So show me
if you're gonna build drinking tools or help me friggin' light the world for firefighters, I'd rather someone that has grit and hard work in their thing, you know?
Yeah. So I mean, to wrap the story up on Triink, we had the Pickaxe out there. We sold a ton of them. We did really well with the Pickaxe, and then we launched a couple other tools. We wanted to see if we could do it again, right? Like, was it a one-hit wonder? Can we do it again? You know, like,
that's a good test.
I think there's some authors out there who will do really well. Then who wrote the Harry Potter series?
Anybody? Yeah, J.K. Rowling.
J.K. Rowling. Didn't she write books after that, like under a different name, to see if she was actually as good as she thought she was?
Oh,
or
interesting.
If it was like just a fluke.
Just a fluke.
Anyways, so we wanted to do some other tools, and so we launched the Skipper here, which is a 7-function boating wrench. So we were big boaters growing up, so this does everything from move your boat plug to open bottles. Of course, you gotta have a bottle opener on there. This is your wrench for your battery terminals. They're all the same size.
Oh yeah.
Lace tightener for your wakeboard bindings, that type of stuff.
That's awesome.
And then we launched a tool called the Pace Pal, which allows you to take two toothpaste tubes. So you have like a little travel size one and a big one, and you can actually fill the travel size one back up again, so you can reduce the waste there.
When the guys sent me your resume, I pulled that up, and I was like, I'd like this guy.
We did the same technique. We launched them on Kickstarter, and we would let the crowd tell us, is this a product or not a product? And they would say yes, and with them, the money would be there, and say, okay, we're in production.
That's awesome.
And then COVID hit, and it was like, like all of our B2B stuff stopped like immediately, right? Like, so that's kind of what brought the end of our business around, was like, well, how do we sell this stuff? Like, people aren't,
if every bar in the world's closed,
every brewery's closed, like, this whole thing dried up, and we pivoted, right? So we're like, well, we can pivot out of this. So we started this. We launched this tool, which is a no-touch tool. So it's made out of copper. So it's antimicrobial by nature, and allows you to grab door handles and interact with like your keypads and your phones.
Oh, interesting.
And we launched that. We partnered with this business called Woodchuck USA, and they were making a bunch of face shields at the time. So they started putting these in their packages. We were able to do really well for that period of time, but that dried up pretty shortly after COVID kind of really got going.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was kind of like one of those things like, well, like, we don't know when it's going to end. We're coming out of college. We have no money. Like, we need to pivot here. And so that's kind of what got me kind of looking at the fire industry. So during this time of this business, I also had some internships too. And my last I internship with a lot of small businesses, one called Mission Boat Gear, making like wake surfing products, things of that nature.
Yeah.
But my last year before I graduated, I'll never forget, one of my mentors told me this. We had 250 mentors that helped us with this business throughout our time.
Awesome.
And one of the mentors told me this. They said, Joe, don't let's keep it lost on you. When you're in college or you're a student or you're young, you're a little puppy.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to play with you. Everybody wants to touch you and pet you and tell you what a good boy you are. And the second you graduate, the second that you that you're not a kid anymore, everybody's like, whoa, what do you want? What do you want from me? You want a job? What do you want? What do you want? And
that's a good point.
They get scared. Like, what are you coming around here for? Like, what are you asking me for advice for? Like, and so they're like, leverage that time, And
that's a really good point.
And so I really wanted to have an internship at like a large company, because at this time I was like, dude, like, small business all the way. Like, I love the business that we're in here. The size is like my thing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, before I write this off, right? Before I'm like, screw large businesses, screw like corporate America, screw all that stuff, I want to do like an internship there. Just be like, that's why I hate this. Like, this is why I don't ever want to go into this. Like, just to like reinforce my own like line of thought.
So did you wind this down?
No. This was during my time in college. I got an internship with Rosenbauer, America.
Oh yeah.
And I remember I called for like 6 months. They were like, we don't do internships here. And I was like, well, but I want to. Like, I'm like, listen, I'm a firefighter. I go to school for business. Like, this would be perfect. Like,
you're leveraging that puppy dog mentality. Like, come on, I'm a student. Like, teach yourself.
So I would just call like all the time, like, hello. And finally, Joe Davis answered the phone one day, who worked there at the time, and he said, hey, you know what? I don't think we do internships here, but maybe like a local dealer would help you, blah, blah, blah. He had some conversations internally, and Todd McBride called me back, and Todd said, hey, would you come in for an interview? And I got to interview with Kevin Kervita, who is the owner of Rosenbauer at the time there in Minnesota. They're like, yeah, man, look at you. Yeah, you can intern here, whatever. So I was making like $12 an hour interning there. And I thought I was going to hate it. And And I actually had a fantastic summer there. And at the end of the summer, though, I was like, yeah, I got my own business. This is doing really well at this point. It's before COVID.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm like, you know what, guys, like, this has been great.
I checked the box. Yep. I experienced it.
It's been great. I'm never coming back here. And so I wrote a super open email to Kevin and John Slauson, who you know.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, guys, like, thanks for the great summer. Here's the good, here's the bad, here's the ugly of what I experienced here. Like, I'm gonna give you my 50,000-foot view.
I'm never gonna see you again.
I'm never gonna see you again. Godspeed, you know. And so I wrote this email, and I was like, whoa, you know, like that's a lot, you know, coming from a kid like me, and send that out there. And it wasn't like 2 hours later, I was gonna go hand my laptop back into IT, and I hear like a bing, you know, and I'm like, what is that? So I open my laptop up, and it's an email from Kevin. He's like, Joe, in like 20 some years of business, like, this is the most honest feedback I've ever had on my business. Like, you were just close enough where you didn't have any biases about our business or biases of people here.
Yeah.
And you just gave me the honest truth. And all I ever wanted is the truth about our business. He's like, if I ever have the chance to hire you, I'd love to hire you. And I was like, what?
That is,
and
so you were thinking like,
so in that moment, I'm like, dang, like, this is a huge business. And they're open to something like that type of feedback. That tells me a lot about their entrepreneurial mindset, and I could work. My entrepreneurial mindset could work in an environment like that. That kind of opened
that's
that
a
idea
good point.
up.
Yeah,
but this business was still going well. So when COVID hit and all this stuff started ramping down, I was like, what are we gonna do? They called it, hey, would you ever consider it? And I was like, yeah, I consider it.
Yeah. So as this company's kind of like, okay, I'm looking for
Yeah. So I kept this going. I was working at Rosenbauer for a while, and then I ended up, working with Rosenbauer, and it's.
All right, so I want to know a little bit more about these mentors that you talked about. You had a list of 250 people you were kind of keeping track of. So how did you leverage those people?
Yeah, so number one, we would always try to find new mentors. Mentors are the greatest thing ever. You just, whether you meet with them one time or you meet with them continuously throughout your process of building a business, it was huge for us to have mentors because each of them has little bits of knowledge that you don't have that you need for that specific problem you're having that day.
Yeah.
And so we used some emailing services that I won't use their names here, but and we were able to make like lists. We'd actually have our mentors on a specific list, and we could actually reach out to certain types of mentors when we need them for certain.
So like if someone
topics.
was an expert in legal,
so like legal or like branding or like whatever. But it was all about like mentors and like using one mentor to try to get yourself in front of another mentor that you need. So like we would start with like a low level person like Target Corp, right? Like we want to be on the shelves of Target. So we'd like identify what we wanted to be, and we try to figure out like what mentors we could link together to get us in front of the person we need to be in front of.
What would you ask them? Like, would you know what your goal was?
So we go and like, hey, would you mentor us a little bit and then get some knowledge about like we try to almost learn from them like what does the structure look like behind Target or Walmart, right? Was that who's in charge of buying? What
do I need to know?
Yeah, and then like, oh hey, by the way, at the end of the day, can you copy that person you talked about, like that blah blah blah? And they're like, oh yeah, and you have a relationship with them, like, oh yeah, absolutely. And so one mentor leads to another mentor, and sometimes mentors can be your biggest customers too. Like,
interesting.
Yes, they're mentors to you, but they also can be some of your biggest customers, and oftentimes it's the best thing ever when your customer is a mentor of yours, because they are ultimately the ones that you need to please with your product or with your service. And
so they give you honest, candid advice
to help you sell better to them, which is really great.
Awesome. Yeah.
So
how do you make the ask? I've struggled with this because there's some folks that I've got really cool mentorship programs with, but like knowing what to ask for is like it's so difficult.
I think the big thing is every mentor doesn't need to be a lifelong mentor, and I think there's so much pressure around like, oh, be a mentor. It's like, oh, I'm making this big commitment to like read those books with you and do this whole thing. Sometimes a mentor is just, hey, could you grab a cup of coffee next week? I want to just hear about how you did this. I saw on LinkedIn, I saw you you use temp workers for something. I want to learn about how to do that for my business. Can I just meet with you one time and get a cup? I'll buy coffee. And
that's a really interesting. I think that's a very tactical thing that whether it's our listeners or like that we could use. It's like sometimes. If there's mutual value, like what can you provide in value back? But I feel like sometimes, especially if you're a puppy dog, as you called it in school, like everyone wants to play with you. Great.
Yep.
You don't have to overuse somebody. Just ask the question.
Literally just ask the question and get what you need, and then let them go on with their life and go on through it. Because those long relationships are really taxed. I mean, they're tough, right? You can't keep up 250 relationships. It's impossible. So we had a few key core mentors that were really, really important to us. But I could just list out for hours here. But they know who they are, and we're fundamental in kind of being like our sounding board. That's what we call our board. We have a sounding board that would just basically throw ideas at and get feedback on. But there's always mentors we'd use to leverage the business forward and try to open doors where we could.
What was the hardest advice any of them ever gave you, or did they ever tell you something you didn't want to hear?
Yeah, I think Some of the best advice that came out of mentors is knowing when to shoot the horse. And we use that term a lot in entrepreneurship, shoot the horse. When do you shoot the horse? And you can love this thing to death, but at some point you got to shoot the horse, at some point that you got to put the dog down. And that's so important. You can be so attached to something and will it to life, but if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. And there were product ideas we had that just, it just weren't going to work, and no matter how badly we wanted to work, it just wasn't supposed to be. And so knowing when to shoot the horse is so important because you can waste a lot of money, a lot of time going down a road that just is no end to it.
Yeah. So and did folks act as a sounding board as you're trying to pull that apart and figure out is this the time?
Certainly. And the other thing I'll say is take everything from mentor with a grain of salt, because the grain, as a grain of rice in this big thing, because the reality is that none of them know your business like you know your business. Ultimately, it's your business, it's your call. Everybody has an opinion. It's the best mentors out there that I experienced were mentors that would say something like, hey, have you thought about this? And they pose a question to you and let you think about it. But I had mentors out there who would be like, you shouldn't do that. No, I don't want to hear I shouldn't do that. I want to hear question why I'm doing it. Know? Help me navigate mentally why, think through this, but don't tell me yes or no to things. I don't want a yes or no from you as a mentor. Yeah. I want to know, I want you to help me think through what am I not thinking about? Yeah. That's what I'm looking for.
I had a guy tell me one time, I'm not going to drive your boat for you. And I was like, the hell are you talking about? And he's like, I'll go for a ride. Yeah. You're the captain. This is your ship.
I see.
You steer where you're going. And I'm it was so weird because I was like, I was looking so okay, what should I have to go A or B? What should I pick? Yep. And he was like, it's not my decision. Yep. Here's all the things I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Don't give a shit which one you pick. I hope you pick the right one. I'll see you later and I'll ride shotgun with you.
And that's the right way to do it, right? You provide your 2 cents and then let them go and do what they think is best for their business. So
you graduated school and then you were doing the internship, and then did you wind this down and then go take that, and that was your full-time gig, or how'd that?
I actually was side by side. They were really together. Yeah. I was still hoping actually for the first year that I'd be able to ramp this back up again, and it just with the time strains of work, then it started it was one of those things where so it was interesting, but no, eventually when I moved out to Maryland for work, and Bardia moved on to more schooling and the AI stuff that he's going into now, it just made sense to just close it down. When you put time into your business, it's crazy. It's just like you. I mean, you put time into field sales, all of a sudden, boom, we're doing well. They put time into engineering, all of a sudden that part of the business is doing really well, right? As the founder, that's it takes your time to build the business segments, and it was one thing I just couldn't give my time to this, and I didn't see my long-term passion being bottle openers. And so I was like, well,
That's so interesting. Yeah. What was it like for you personally? When you decided all right, this is not going to be my thing anymore. I'm going to stop doing Triink. What was that decision's a heavy decision.
It was a really hard decision. So much of my identity had been put into this. My entire college identity, we walk into a bar and oh my gosh, the Pickaxe guys are here, and everybody hold their tool up, and it was my identity. Yeah. It was I was Triink was me. How do I separate myself from that? Yeah. And it wasn't that bad in the end because it continues going on. I mean, I still get texts today with pictures. I'll see pictures of people out in the world holding one of these up there, at a party, sitting on the table. I'll walk into a friend's house and it's oh, hey, I made that. That's cool, It's still there. And we still do some sides. We still have a bunch of stocks, so we'll still do some side stuff. People oh yeah, we get 10 more. When one of these companies called, can we get some more? Yeah, we got some more. Go ahead. Sure. So, but it was extremely emotional to go through that.
Yeah. How did you guys have employees in, or what was how many?
Yeah, so we had what we call our interns, and we did pay them in the end. We were able to, which was nice. But
nice of you.
So we had a graphic design intern, and we had a marketing intern that helped us to basically keep our social stuff going. So there's 2 things I hated in business, and one of the things I think that maybe we look differently on business on is your mindset in business, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's more we're gonna build a large fishbowl, and then we're gonna figure out a way to fill that up. Yeah. And my mindset in business is we're going to do everything we can in-house until we can't do any more. It's not a second more in that day, and then we'll add somebody.
Yours is probably a lot more stable. For those listening, my advice is take Joe's advice.
But so we're going to add somebody into this point, And there's 2 things that every entrepreneur hates. I think this is fair to say. They hate accounting.
Yeah,
awful.
That is very
it's
true.
Just life sucking out of your business. It's not why you're in it.
Can't you just put more money in here? Come on.
And they hate they like marketing, but they hate the task of marketing. The actual keeping up with daily social channels, it's just really hard to do. Yeah. And so those are 2 things we kind of outsourced.
Interesting.
Was try to because that was just made it not fun. We want to have fun, So we got rid of the 2 things we didn't like, which was daily social updates, and then our accounting stuff.
Well, it's funny you talk about Bardia's skill sets being complementary to yours, and then in business, like your first hires are people that have complementary skill sets to your areas of either frustration or non-expertise.
Things you don't want to do.
Yeah, and it's like, I remember I knew how valuable at Hiviz, I knew how valuable video stuff was. I knew how valuable media stuff was. Our first hire was a videographer because I wasn't good enough to do that at the level I wanted. And so it's like, all right, like it's frustrating to me, but I know it's important. And so fine, hire that person and bring them in, and then they did the role. And then our second hire was an accountant.
Yes.
And it was like, all right, so we got to have someone help us figure out the stuff that we're not good at. And the fun thing about business is that you can literally pick. You can pick who you want to hire. You want to hire a warehouse guy first? Hire him. If you want to hire
whatever it is that makes sense for you, right? Like whatever you don't want to do, you're not good at doing, or you think you do better. That's absolutely.
That's so interesting. Yeah. So how do you let those people know that the end was near?
Well, it was during that time when we got out of college, and we had launched our last Kickstarter at that point. And when the Kickstarters weren't going, we weren't really. It wasn't a ton of work to be done. So it kind of all came apart naturally. But really, there was not like a big breaking moment. I was like, we're done now.
Big
like,
cry fest.
It
whatever,
slowly
like
ramped down to the point where like, we should just shut this down. We're not doing taxes anymore, type of thing. Like,
that makes sense. It's the natural evolution of business. I mean, it's like make hay while the sun's shining, and then if it's not, then move on to the next thing.
Exactly.
That's interesting. So I want to hear more about this corporate journey, because going from small business bottle things to like making fire trucks and handling distribution and tech all over the world, that's a big change.
Yeah.
And you're firefighter up at college.
Yes.
So I got to hear, you moved back somewhere. You end up in Minnesota.
Yes.
Connect the dots.
Yeah. So firefighter for 4 years up at college. I became a captain of the department up there in Minnesota, up at college there. Again, really cool department. I can't think of another department like that. I mean, our average age in the department is like 18, 19 years old across the whole thing. So we had 16 student firefighters. We had, I think, 3 or 4 monks, and there's a monastic community there. Monks.
Oh, really?
Catholic monks.
That are firefighters.
We had 2 priests, and then we had a full-time chief. I think 1 community member that was a firefighter there. So we had like a total of like 24, 25, 26 places in there for.
You always have a driver.
I always have a driver.
Have your demographics set that way.
Yep. And
that's awesome.
It was super cool. Fell in love with it. I mean, I was like, man. I mean, I really thought like maybe I'll go into the full-time fire service at some point here.
So you had multiple identities. Like this was one, but like there was this fire service thing forming.
Yeah. Yep. And really, I'm just that person. I think just like you, I will do whatever I like to do that I'm passionate about. If I'm not passionate about it, I just don't do it. You know? And so this was passion point for me. Passion point for me is firefighting, and I was like, how do I mix these together? And that's really where the Rosenbauer thing came up. I was like, this is awesome. And it was really fun at Rosenbauer because I got to start in inside sales, kind of see how the process works of like building and selling fire trucks, which is cool.
Did you know anything about it, like from your fire service days?
Yeah, we had bought a Pierce in 2017 that I was a part of just a little bit of that purchasing process with them, and so I got to see a little bit of that. So I was like, oh, this actually exists. Like that's actually a thing behind this. Which is cool to be able to see that at a young age. And then obviously, the Rosenbauer thing is a company in Minnesota. It was like I'd driven by when I was a kid a couple of times. My dad was like, "Oh, let's see the fire trucks out there in the field." And it's like, "Oh, that's cool. What do they do there? They make them. Oh, cool.
That's cool."
But yeah, what was great about Rosenbauer is I got to start off inside and see how the business of building and selling fire trucks works with dealerships and all this other stuff. And then as it progressed, I had some really cool opportunities to travel internationally. I sold fire trucks in Saudi Arabia. I sold fire. Cool. It was really, really cool. Got to do some really cool activities there. Got to move all over the country with Rosenbauer. But the coolest part was they recognized, and what I give them a lot of credit for, they recognized my skill set was building businesses. And it was some group. I would say Slassman's a big part of this. I owe him a lot of thanks for my career there. He identified early on, he's like, Joe, you should be doing different than what you're doing in here. Like you should be doing something that really feeds you. And he knew the Triink story, I think, a little bit. And so they set me up just to build my own business inside Rosenbauer. So I built the Rosenbauer battery extinguishing system.
That's like for electric robots. Vehicle fire stuff. Yeah, I think that's so cool.
Rosenbauer firefighting robots, our nozzles and our helmets and all that stuff. I became responsible for that group of products, and some of the products we sold here at the time, some of the products we didn't sell here at the time. And so I was able to build a small business within this really large company, and I had free reign. I was like marketing, I could grab whenever I wanted, I could grab anywhere. So it was really pretty cool. So the last, 2 years, my time there, I was building a business inside of a business. And so it was kind of feeding me in that way.
That's interesting.
So it was pretty awesome. Yeah.
It's funny when I'll tell a little story. When we were like kind of discussing this position, I remember Ryan interviewed, our VP of sales interviewed. He's like, hey, I got this guy.
Yeah.
Do you know this Joe guy? And I'm like, I don't think I know this guy. And I was like, oh, the guy from the videos. Yeah, I know Joe. Because you're doing the battery
all the videos. Things. Yeah.
So then he's like, yeah, what do you think? And I was like, I honestly don't know the guy from a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, well, let's schedule an interview. So to our listeners, we did this interview. We
Yeah.
did this long process, whatever.
Yeah.
And we're finally like ready to extend an offer or whatever. And I can't remember when it was, like how you phrased it, but you were like, I just want you to know, like, I'm not actually looking for a job. I'm not like like I'm actually happy doing what I'm doing. Like, but
the craziest part about it, when I looked at Hiviz, it been a company. I remember I first started off. This industry's old. Old industry. So most companies I call, it was like, it was like you hit a phone line. It was like you sit in a waiting queue for 2 hours, talk to somebody who sounds like they're a million years old, no passion at all. Like,
yeah. And
when I called Hiviz for the first time, I think it was like the BG2 product I was calling.
So this is like before you're looking for roles here or anything like that.
This is years.
Being a firefighter or working at Rosenbauer.
Yeah. And I called Hiviz, and it was like a Tuesday morning at like 11 a.m. I call in. I'm like, hey, I got a customer requesting like a BG2 18-inch. In my part list here, I see like a 24-inch. And I see like a blah, blah. But I don't see that. And it was Kayoma, who I didn't know who Kayoma was at the time. It was Kayoma on the line. And she's like, I'm going to make a part number right now. I was like, make a part number right now? What do you mean make a part number right now? She's like, well, we'll make it right now. And she literally just gave me a new part number and like a pricing on the spot. And I was like, what is this business? And so I follow on the social media and stuff like that. And I was like, interesting. Like, they're so different than anything else in the space. They're very much like where I come from with the small business world. They're very much in like that. They're like the company I interned for. They're in the similar size company. And I always kind of said, hey, I don't want to leave Rosenbauer, but if I ever leave Rosenbauer, I think Hiviz would be the business I'd leave for in our industry.
Interesting.
It's the one that seems most naturally like lends itself to kind of where I'd like to be in the industry. And when you guys were talking about posting jobs, I didn't even apply. I sent Ryan, who I didn't know, obviously, sent Ryan my resume and just said, hey, like, let me know if you guys have anything that would fit my skill set. Like,
oh, that's so funny.
So he called me and he's just like, hey. I'm like, hey. We just talked for like an hour, and we didn't talk about anything. I mean, he didn't bring up what role we were going to be looking at, and it's kind of how it all went. But like I said, I wasn't even looking for a job. It really was like, if I were to leave, this is who I want to leave for. That's so funny. And it just kind of worked out. So
I always think it's funny, like in retrospect, thinking back about any one of our employees. There's a story that we weren't a part of. We were a part of half the story.
Yeah.
But there's another half of the story that occurs before we begin working together.
Yeah.
And even like in our process, the first half of the story between when you and Ryan were speaking and other team members, and then when I got involved, like I had no idea. But it was funny because for us, I was struggling. Our business is entrepreneurial. I think it's funny our parallels in like school age businesses and then other lawn mowing. I had a lawn mowing business. Did, funny enough, snow removal. Had a little business doing biofuels, very similar to Triink. I mean, not similar, but like it ran the business, wound the business down, and then started this business after being a firefighter, learning the needs and unique things in the fire space. But it's funny because I think about like that entrepreneurial mindset is one that, I think fuels a certain type of individual and is what our customers resonate with. Because firefighters are all like, every firefighter's got a side hustle. The 2448 exists specifically because I want to like celebrate and get excited about the firefighter side hustle.
I can't tell you how many times we were building tools and everybody knew as a firefighter, all the mentors we talked to, or knew as a firefighter. We had a whole board of we kind of our board meetings we'd have. So we had a bunch of mentors we'd bring together and rent a space out downtown Minneapolis, and we'd sit around and we'd just share where we're at in the business, provide kind of updates where we're going with business, and get feedback from all these different people. Which I think is really valuable. But one of the things that was constantly a thing was like, hey, when are you going to launch a firefighting tool? And I long thought about like, how do I launch a firefighting tool? And the problem with firefighting tools is much like the question of, I also like rock climbing too. And it was like, when are you going to launch a rock climbing tool? The problem is that firefighters and rock climbers love to build their own tools. So they have a problem. And what does a firefighter do? They're all entrepreneurs in their own way.
They'll make their own.
They make their own tool. And so like, I can't do that better than they can. Like,
that's a really good point.
Beer and spirits drinkers don't make their own tools. So like, they're just trying to get drunk, And so like, I can make a tool for you. Like, I mean, let me serve your market, And so that's the problem with firefighting. It's like, it's really hard to make a tool that's going to be
the revolution.
To be the next Halligan, I mean, good luck.
Yeah, there's 8,000 iterations. There's a million, like the New York hook, the standard pipe pull. There's a million different options.
Exactly. So it was super.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
I liked what you said earlier about this puppy mentality. I've been stewing on that, as you said. Like, it's such an interesting thing from your professor. Like, people do lean into students. And I remember starting Hiviz. I had a mentor. Mentor is a big word. But I had this guy. I called this local tow truck operator, and I was like, "Hey, man, I'm researching this thing. Will you teach me about the towing industry?" And it was like I was trying to start a lighting business, but I wanted to know if tow trucks needed this lighting tech. So he has me come up and like ride around with the guys, see what it's like to be a tow guy. And I leave. I didn't ask the guy for any business. I was just like, okay, great. I did the part. I asked the guy, but I was a student. I was like, whatever age. And he ended up like, hey, can I just, like, I'll support you. What the hell? Sure. I'll buy some lights from you. So I sold the guy some stuff, but it was like so disarming. And the fire service, interestingly, they were like, dude, we're not buying from you. I'm not buying from a salesman. Like, get the hell out of here. And so I joined a little volunteer fire station, learned the role of a firefighter. And now what I think is unique about firefighter-owned business, the people that come on this show, are that they have a little bit of that, like, hey, I'm a firefighter, but I've got this business I'm starting, and people sort of gravitate to it. Similar in this puppy model thing. Like, I think that's such a unique piece of advice to give people is leverage that.
People ask, like, if you could sum up entrepreneurship in like one word, my word for it is community. Entrepreneurship and community are hand in hand. There's no such thing as being a solo entrepreneur. Every entrepreneur has a community of people behind them making that happen, of mentors and customers and all that stuff that makes this possible. Yeah. So entrepreneurship is really the art of community. And what is firefighting? Firefighting is community. And so I think there's a lot of parallels there. You sit around the dining room table with the same group of guys every night and that type of stuff. It's that level of community you have with each other in the fire service, but also with serving a community as well.
Public, you wonder about the person that you've gone and seen 15 times, or you wonder about whatever.
But I'll tell you the other thing. So I moved out, because I got done with college, I finished up my time up there and moved back down to the city. So I was like, I want to be a firefighter still, right? So I was working at Rosenbauer now, and so I joined a department in the Twin Cities called Lake Johanna Fire Department. Fantastic department, super progressive. And I'm a very progressive. I like electric fire trucks. I'll say it. Okay, everybody hate me. Whatever.
I'm a fan.
Yeah, whatever. And so I like tech. I like to see how we can do the job better. And this is a very progressive department. A lot of fun. And it was really cool department. It was a full-time, part-time department. So we had no full-time staff. We covered a population of about 46,000 people. We ran about 4,000 or 5,000 calls a year.
Oh wow, yeah.
And we had 88 part-time members. You had to work a minimum of 12 hours a week. So I slept there most nights. That's what I do. I'd sleep there and then kind of get paid to sleep, which sounds great in theory, so we don't sleep. You end up running calls all night. But it was so funny.
Calls a year. I mean, that's how many stations?
We had 3 stations. 2 were staffed full time, so we had 8 firefighters on duty at all times to cover the town. We covered 3 cities out there, right in between Minneapolis and St. Paul. It's right in the dead center of the two.
If you divide 2,500 calls by 365 days a year, that's multiple calls a day. You're not sleeping often.
We're busy. Yeah, we're busy. Very, very busy station. And I'm just starting. I was just getting to Rosenbauer stuff, and I'll never forget it. It was like, man, it's my second or third night in a row. We had a fire, and we get toned out, and I'm out there, and we're on scene for hours. It's 2, 3 in the morning, and I'm like, God, tomorrow's gonna suck. Tomorrow the office is gonna blow. And I'm sitting there, and I look around. It's like Rosenbauer. The whole every truck there from all the departments around there was all Rosenbauer.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, if I see one more freaking Rosenbauer tomorrow, yes, you can overdo it, That's so funny. So those guys that sell fire trucks and also work as firefighters, that's a lot of time fire trucks out there. It's a lot of fire truck time.
That's really funny. So, it's a unique perspective where you can get you got to have that balance.
Overstimulation. But the thing is though, is I don't know, some people they lose the. You talk to a lot of sales reps in the industry like that, it's a fire truck. They at some point it kind of just wears off on them.
They become jaded or whatever.
But you see someone like Lee or myself, I don't know if we're just young still and naive, but we just generally think every fire truck's super cool. We'll sit and just talk about it for hours. That's sick, And ask all these really probing questions. We're just interested personally in what the fire trucks are. So it's just interesting.
It's funny you talk about community and that personality style. When we're looking at building our team at Hiviz, obviously, and it's a little bit divergent from the 2448, but the team has to be if you can't have the curiosity of a child around what you're doing, whether it's a fire truck or it's a light fixture or it's a laptop or whatever,
you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, you have to you got to be interested, because if I don't care about drinking tools and I don't drink and I'm just whatever, this isn't how am I supposed to get so passionate about this that I can tell you all the reasons why this is going to change your life? And I think that in any business, we have listeners that I met a guy at FDIC that runs a business that's they do radio, two-way radios and stuff, and it was really funny. He was telling me that this show's been unique because he gets little tidbits out of it. And as he's struggling with whatever the task of the day is, that it's nice to hear other business people just talking about okay, what's good about otherwise. But I think that guy, he's a ham radio operator. He loves radios. Obviously this guy, so I sign off, I'm KJ4SYR. I've been a ham radio guy forever. But I sign off, it's hey man, the thing is, if you can love what you do, and it's okay, the old cliche, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Well, you still work your ass off because it still is not easy to do. Yeah. But if you love what you do, it makes that work worthwhile. Yeah. And that's why I think ultimately we do what we do,
Exactly. Yeah. And it's Lee and I had that conversation today about this, and it's everybody their whole life wants to try to fit in, right? Like everybody's trying to fit into like the crowd growing up, right? And like Lee was different than the crowd. Like Lee likes fire trucks, and like he got made fun of for that growing up. And Lee works with us here at Hiviz. He's an application engineer, and like I was into snowmaking, like super weird hobby. Like people were like, "What's this kid's deal?"
And I was in
super
school bus.
weird. Yeah, it's school bus, like super weird stuff. But in the end of the day, like as you get away from high school and college and all this stuff, and you get out into like the working world, somehow like Lee's got more Instagram followers than probably the cool kids at school did. Like he's got like 10,000 Instagram followers that follow his photography page for fire trucks. Like the weird kid becomes the cool kid because also people are like, wait, I don't want to be like everybody else. I want to do what I'm passionate about. And like this kid like does it's cool, So it's been kind of fun. Like you get into your passions and you work in that space. That's where you thrive. And some people can go to work and just do a job that's just a job.
Yeah.
We're not one of those people, I don't think. But like no, some people can, And one thing I will say, back on topic of 2448, is the what I like about this industry with our business or working at any of the OEMs, etc., is so many businesses literally spend millions of dollars. I know my dad's company that he works for, they spent $5 million trying to come up with a new logo for their business. I mean, it's just stupid, right? And some like law firm, whatever. But they try to come up with like a logo and like a meaning for their work and stuff like that. And what I like about our business is so purpose driven. There is such a clear purpose, such a humble purpose to what we're doing here or any of the OEMs are doing. We're trying to help firefighters save lives. Like period. End of story. Save lives, protect property. Like supporting that mission. Like I can't think of another industry that's got a more just direct mission statement that actually means something to the world. Like we're making the world a better place. Like everybody in the space is, I'm not being brave and not trying to brag and say that, but I'm saying that this industry, what we're doing, I mean, we go out in front of, sales reps and talk all the time. You did just the other day, and you shared too with them. And I always make sure to share. I think a lot of people forget what we're doing in this space. People who sell fire trucks, people who sell to this community or who are firefighters, don't ever get lost on you. Like what the purpose of your work is. Like, this is important stuff. Like,
it's funny, like even our guests, like radio strap guys, like those radio straps are super important. It is interesting. You really need to remember that there's value in it. And if you can remember there's value in it and you can share that value with your customer, you can get people excited about it.
Well, I mean, here's a crazy story. When I was working at Rosenbauer, we had a couple people unfortunately pass away, just like anywhere in a big company. But we had a person pass away at Rosenbauer and got in a horrible accident on the way to work and was killed in an accident on the way to work one morning. And it was just a horrible time. I mean, it was just awful. The whole office just gutted. And we all went to her service, and we brought some fire trucks down to the service like that. She was with Rosenbauer for quite some time, and it was crazy to think because that morning, some of our own folks at Rosenbauer who were firefighters on the side were on that call, right? Which is wild.
Yeah.
But more wild than that, it's like the fire truck that was there that day to help her was a fire truck that she probably was on some part of designing or working on actually pushing through the process.
Interesting.
So it's so real, like that product isn't just like ultimately you do your best work every day because that someday could be you that needs that product to save your life. Like it's such that was such a galvanizing experience to go through that and see like this stuff really matters, like super matters, So I don't know, it's crazy. But
well, if you had to leave our listeners with like some parting advice from an entrepreneur, firefighter turned entrepreneur or entrepreneur turned firefighter through big corporate, now back to small and medium-sized rapid growth business, what is your kind of parting wisdom for someone who's either considering starting a business, in a business, thinking about business otherwise? Two
things I would say. There's never an easier time than right now to do something different, to start a business or to jump ship and do something you're passionate about. There's always an excuse for why you can't, right? Oh, now we got a house payment. Now I got kids. Now I got this. I can't. Oh, now's not a good time. There's always an excuse to why to push it down the road. The reality is that the further you push on the road, the harder. There's more reasons every day you wait to do something you really want to do. And second is, everything we do in the fire service and in entrepreneurship is built around community. Make sure that you are giving 110% back. If you have an opportunity to mentor somebody else or help some other way, do so because it comes back in return to you.
That's fantastic. Well, Joe, thank you so much for being on the show. We've really enjoyed you.
Thank you.
We'll catch you next time.
All right.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something. If you want to be on the show or you know someone who should, head over to the2448.com and submit your business. Don't forget to follow and subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. If you thought it was 4 stars, still give us 5 stars or I will find you. See you next time. Later.